Greetings, everybody. This is Calvin Ward, and on tonight we have a special guest for you. This is our LinkedIn professional series. So we're going live on LinkedIn, also going live on Facebook and YouTube and some other sites, I believe Twitter. So if this is interesting to you, please comment, please share with a friend, and please tune in. We have a special guest for you on tonight, none other than Dr. Miranda Avant-Elliott. She is the Alderwoman of Bellefontaine. And I said it again, but we're going to say Bellefontaine, Neighbors, Missouri. Yes, and so she'll be talking with us tonight on our topic of church and state, the role of godly character in politics. So please stay tuned, and we'll be back right after this. Greetings, Dr. Miranda. How are you on tonight?
I'm fine. And you?
I am doing great. I am doing
Good.
absolutely great. Absolutely great. And so I want to talk here on tonight, and we have you. Can you tell us, before we get into the topic, can you tell us a little bit about your background? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, great. I am an educator of over 17 years, and I have been an elected official going on 4 years, actually up for election next year. And I'm an entrepreneur. So I have kind of placed myself in multiple roles that are very important in our community: education, politics, entrepreneurship, which is financial empowerment.
Mm.
So I dibble and dabble into everything. And so on tonight, as we talk about church and state, we can talk about the role in multiple arenas. So I'm looking forward to the topic. As an elected official here in Bellefontaine Neighbors, I've served a couple of years as the president of the Alderman Board, which is a position appointed by my peers, which means I will serve in the absence of the mayor. I'm also on the planning and zoning, which is also a position appointed by my peers. So I see it as an honor to have been elected by the citizens and to have the trust of my peers to step in the absence of the mayor. So I am an accountability person, so I do a lot of that in the role that I'm in.
Amen. So let's talk about this. So why is this an important topic? So the topic tonight is church and state, talking about the role of godly character in politics. And you told us a little bit about your background. Why is this something of concern? And key for me is there's been a lot of uproar on, and again, I'm not asking you for any comments. You can comment on what you want to comment on, but I asked that question because I noticed I was talking to some of my friends, and they was like, Texas just passed this law about abortion, and you can't, have abortion after a certain time. And of course, that's connected to what some would say godly character, but people have an issue with that. So in your role and what you do, why is this a topic that people need to know about? Why is this a topic of importance? And why do you feel like it's a topic of importance right now?
Well, this is so much on time. I was just recently appointed on the Missouri pro-choice board here in my state. And the reason why is important because from the Christian aspect, we serve a God that allows us to choose. And the issue of pro-choice is not a advocacy towards abortion or not. Is more so about that woman's choice in their own personal health. So when you ask a Christian or a regular person, do you want the government making decisions about your health or about your family? They will say no. But there are individuals who advocate against that woman's choice to choose whether or not they want to have an abortion or if they want to actually carry out their pregnancy.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an important topic because it's a matter of choice and somewhat of a violation of individuals' personal decision making when the government involves themselves for whatever reason they choose to. They're imposing their beliefs and their cultural beliefs onto everyone. When women, we have suffered so much as far as inequalities that the decision made in Texas really is a setback, and it sets a precedence that our decision making is not valued, and we can't make decisions on our own. And that's the message that's being sent when you say that you can't make the choice because we don't believe you make the best choice. So that's
Well,
why it's an important conversation right now.
right. Well, I think that is, and see, and things like this to give people different views, because there are people to say, "Oh, Christians," it was like, "Yeah, we're all for, pro-life and not having abortions." I remember I was talking with someone recently, and he said he owned a business, and he's not really Christian himself, but he owned a business, and he had a coworker that was with him, and his coworker brought him this letter as to why they can't take the vaccine, and he turned it into human resources, and he said it was the most unprofessional letter I had ever read. I was like, "What do you mean?" He said it said, God doesn't want us to do this. It had scriptures on it. It had, all of this, and he was bringing this to human resources. And I just say that because I think there's a time and a place for everything, even though, we're Christian, there's a time and a place and a way to present things. And that's just, this whole conversation kind of reminded me of that, because the letter, instead of just saying, "This is who I am, this is my faith, this is what we believe, this is why," it was now an evangelization letter to human resources and everybody that read it. And some people don't know that is a turnoff. I want to talk a little, if we could, a little bit. We're talking about the role of godly character in politics. I think a lot of Christians don't understand that when they are all rah for decisions, and hear whether I'm yay or nay, not the topic, but I'm talking about the gist of the matter. That's why we have people in philosophy and theology who can talk, and metaphysics, who can talk about topics amorally, right? And so that's the whole point. So at the end of the day, I don't think Christians really understand when they are for somebody saying, when they are for the government saying, "Yes, this is what you have to do," that works in reverse.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
so it works in reverse. And I don't think they understand that. I think a lot of people really take that, even while we're talking about vaccines. What if the state turned around and mandated you had to go get a vaccine? People would be in a uproar. And I'm gonna ask for your thoughts, because I want some more of your thoughts. Because recently, on the same topic, I had a gentleman tell me, he said that is male, yes. He said, "I don't think any," well, I can't say it the way he said it. He basically said it that no male, if they do not have the organs of a female, should be making any decision regarding them. Now, that was his point of view, given the decision. Can you just give us a little bit more on this topic? If somebody's watching and say, "Well, I don't understand, Miranda, you said you was Christian. Well, why is this such a blow? Why is this a blow to women not to be able to make a decision when it's a Christian decision? It's pro-life. We're saving life. Why is this such an issue?"
Yeah, as I was sharing, it took a while. We didn't have rights at the same time as men, and especially when it comes to other races. Me being an African American woman, to know that it took a minute before we can have rights, and then you say you don't get to make a decision about your health, no matter what happens to cause you to be in this situation. You don't get to choose. And unfortunately, in this day and age, and it has been historic, that young women have been taken advantage of, whether it's by a family friend, a family member, a stranger, and the result has been pregnancy. And you're saying that this person cannot back out of this situation, um, because is now a law, and you'll be violating the law. That's unfair to that person to be forced to do that. Now, when we talk about pro-life, you can be pro-life and be pro-choice, because you're saying that I value life and I believe that a child should have an opportunity to come to this earth, but you still value that person's decision to um, decide whether or not they want to be the person that brings a life to this earth, because it's the responsibility they have that they will be taking on financially and so forth. And so, people make decisions and they have consequences. And sometimes the consequences, when it relates to a woman, they can't escape it as easily as a man. So the statement that the gentleman made, that he don't feel that a male should be making those decisions. Now you have to think about it. Two parties, two human beings were responsible for that decision. And I do feel that men have an equal right in that decision, but ultimately, if they decide to back away, it's the woman that's left to take care of that child financially, and nurture them for 18 and more years, 25, 40, 50. And so, we have to, as Christians, honor God's word and allow individuals to make choice. But if we want to instill a godly character within them, you teach them how to make a choice when they are confronted with a situation that may appear to violate a godly principle. So that's where God come in is, and being a Christian comes in, is how do we help children, teenagers, and adults? How do we equip them with the tools to make godly decisions when they're confronted with situations that they may not feel they have a way of escape? So that's the alignment with the conversation with that gentleman around,
Yeah.
being able to.
Yeah, because I think that's a important conversation. A lot of these conversations, assisted death, a lot of these conversations are very interesting. I think it would do well to have some good panels, and I'm getting a little bit of a lag here. But alrighty. So let's get into this. Godly character in politics. So what does that mean? What are we talking about here? Godly character in politics. I'm saved, I'm a politician. I'm Christian, I'm a politician. What do you mean? That means, because I say I'm Christian, I have godly character, right? So I don't know. Explain this to us. Talk to us about what you're talking about, godly character. And I think this is good because not only in the politics in the natural, but also you have things what they call church polity. But you also have people in their various corporations and organizations. I was in the military. I've seen leaders. I've seen Army chaplains. Who said they were Christian or whatever faith they were at, and they did not act that way. Or I've seen leaders who never professed to be Christian, but guess what? Their character resembled more godly character than some of these mugs that was claiming I'm Christian and I'm in a position. So talk to us a little bit as you introduce this to us, godly character, and why is this something on your heart to share and to talk about?
Well, I'm going to start with the reason why I wanted to focus on this topic. I've been in both education and in the political arena, and I have engaged with leaders who have professed to be Christians, and their behaviors were not indicative of an individual who proclaims to be a Christian. So what does unchristian behavior from a Christian, I guess, how does it impact others who witness this? It is a bad witness. And it causes people to not want to draw to the faith because they see someone that professes to be a Christian and none of what they do as far as engagement with others really speaks to that. So I wanted to talk about this because I'm on the board where there are maybe two ministers, majority are Christians, and maybe one person who was once a Christian and strayed away from their faith. And the behaviors that are demonstrated is so far from a godly character that is appalling. And so I'm like, okay, how can we address this? And I think what people have done in politics often, they take off the clothing of a Christian to put on the clothing of a secular position. And it's only from an assumption that I cannot display a godly character while being a politician. And the hierarchy of things is divine law is above all law. So if divine law is above all law, then that becomes your moral compass as you make decisions and engage with other people so that you can do things that's pleasing to God. At this point, the behaviors that I see is no way is pleasing to God. And you can ask, okay, well, can someone talk to this person to help them to see their character is not right, and to help them to improve their behaviors? When you have a relationship with God, that's where the accountability lie. When you have developed that relationship, that becomes your guide to think through your decisions and how you engage with others without anyone needing to intervene and tell you, oh, that was wrong what you did, and you should not have lied, and you should not have attempted to deceive or manipulate. Because God and the Holy Spirit is that person's guide to make decisions. And so I'm like, if there is no accountability from God, there is not much I can provide to redirect behavior, because the person has made a decision that there is no one important, even the person who they have declared as their Lord. And apparently that person, God is not Lord to them. There is no fear of God to the point of saying that I want to be pleasing unto him. And so you have the behaviors that are seen both in making decisions that, people make that are very unethical, and how they engage with people that is not with dignity, and how they communicate to deceive others in order to gain influence and power. Is I think is very sad, the things that I've seen both on the education side and on the political side, especially with education. That's an arena where we are focused on
Wow.
serving children and families, but the objective of some individuals are not focused on serving children and families. They are focused on politics and corruption. And you're like, in the education setting? Yes, in the education setting, they're also
Wow.
focused on inequalities as it relates to gender. And so it's like, how can you profess to be a Christian and you allow certain things to happen to others, you cause things to happen to others without any empathy as it relates to the situations that people experience in your community,
I have
your
a question
school or
for
work
you.
community.
How has that affected other people who serve? I know when I was in positions, and a lot of times people didn't know that I was Christian. How is that affecting the relationship between peers? Because again, the topic, godly character in politics. We need godly character in politics to help make the correct decisions. You would like to think that a person who professes to be, and here's the thing, when we say godly character, we're connecting that to Christianity. You would think that a person who professes to be Christian, that their values and the decisions that they make would be connected to the what some people call the Judeo-Christian perspective. You would think that would be their decisions would be connected to that. I realize that all the time some of their decisions are not, because they have to make decisions for the whole sometimes, and not just a particular demographic. It has to be a little bit difficult sometimes. But at the same time, when there are clear decisions to be made, clear activities and things that need to be done, that are decisions that fall directly within the scope of the leader to be able to say, no, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. I think a lot of people fear, and that's what I want to ask you about. Do you think people who are in political positions or who are in certain positions, whether it's in education and certain senior positions, fear that somebody's going to say you made that decision because you're Christian, or you made that decision because of your faith, not because it was a sound decision to make? What do you think about that particular perspective with people who are in leadership positions being make in their decision making? Do you think they're afraid to make it because somebody's gonna say you made that because we know you're Christian and give them hell for it? Or what do you think from that perspective?
I just think that is not fair. I think that some individuals choose to pursue acceptance, and when you pursue acceptance in a secular environment, then as I mentioned before, you take off the clothing of a Christian in order to take on the identity that you feel is more accepting in the environment that you're in.
Well,
And
why
I,
not? Well, why not? Miranda, I'm gonna play devil's advocate here. Well, Paul said, "I know how to be abound in a base." How people say, "When in Rome, do what the Romans do," and so that's what they tell people. They. I'm a politician. I can't be all for one. What are some of these excuses? Miranda, you're telling me I can't take off my Christian and put on my politician, but Miranda, I got people that I deal with that are different constituents, different constituents and different demographics. I can't be the same thing to all men. So some people feel they gotta switch. They gotta get among their colleagues, good old boy club. And when I'm over here, because this happens in the church too, and that's a whole nother program. But people get in their little cliques and groups, and when you're over here with the big wigs, you act in one way, but when it's time to make decisions for the people, you act another. What do you say to the person? Hey, what do you say to the person that says, Miranda, I'm just doing my job. I just sit down my Christian hat, I put on my politician hat, and I make decisions because I got Christians, Buddhists, Muslims. I have everybody. I can't be making decisions based on my faith. What do you say to that person who's a Christian, who professes to be the Christian leader, but says, I can't make decisions just based on my faith because I serve everybody?
I would say that once you take on a godly character, that God will give you the guidance on how to engage with an individual to make a connection. So it's not about taking on a different identity. It's about having the skills and tools to effectively connect with someone at their level, based on the communities they are from. I can talk to a homeless person. I can talk to somebody in the White House. I can talk to the middle class, low class. It doesn't matter. And I don't change my identity when I'm engaging with each person. I just connect with them in a human way that make them feel that I'm inviting them into a space with dignity. So it doesn't matter. I don't have any respect to persons. God doesn't have any respect to persons. When you engage with people with a level of dignity and integrity, you don't have to switch your personality, because you're talking about personality. The person is changing their personality to fit certain situations, and that's not necessary in order to be impactful. Some people relax their tongue as they speak with children versus adults, or with people in poverty versus those in a different class. That's you have an identity crisis. You have to know who you are, have a relationship with God, and He will lead and guide you, and give you the tools you need to connect with people effectively in a warm and inviting way, and you can achieve the things that you need to, regardless.
And what you're talking about is persuasive. It reminds me, I was at Wayland Baptist University, Lord have mercy, so many years ago. And anyway, I remember one of the classes that I took was persuasive speech. And I remember that because it teaches you, just like you said, if I'm Christian and I'm running for office or I'm in a leadership position, because I've seen this in the military. You profess to be saved, and then as soon as you become sergeant major, as soon as you become the colonel, then your personality changes because you want to deal with those. Let's see, I almost went religious. I'm not going to use that word. You want to deal with these mugs over here because they are the higher ups, and this is how they operate. And so now, there's, like you just said, there's an identity crisis, because when I'm around this group, I'm acting like this. When I'm around this group, I'm acting like that. Let's talk about what is that dynamic like among colleagues when you're supposed to trust one another? What does that feel like for you when you're surrounded by people who are your colleagues, your equals? You have to trust. You need them to make decisions. You need to make decisions, but you feel you can't trust them because they have a Jekyll and Hyde mentality. And I know sometimes it's better if people never profess to be Christian, right? Because then you know what you're dealing with. But when people profess that this is what you are, and you have the Jekyll and Hyde syndrome going on, how does that make you feel like as a leader among equals? What is the relational dynamic? What is the trust level like? Because I can imagine if you and I are on the same team and you feel I'm Christian, but you can't trust my decisions. You know I'm living. You know I'm fake in my faith. So how can you trust decisions that I'm making concerning politics, business, the city, the community? What is that dynamic like? Does it create for, I'm going to use the term, a hostile work environment? Because this applies to people watch this. This applies to the military. If you're watching this applies to being in an environment where you have people that claim to do one thing, but they act another way when they get around leaders, when they get around civilians, when they get around other people. This also applies for church, for years. I've seen people, whether the bishop or the apostle, the pastor, I've seen people in positions when they were okay one day, when they got a position, then all of a sudden everything changed, right? And so now we're putting this in politics. So what does that relational dynamic look like? I'm gonna say from a human dimension, but what does that look like? Can you trust, like when you got a bunch of colleagues that I'm supposed to trust these guys to work with, but they don't it's like you can't trust them, or you can't trust me. If that's the case, I'm working with you. I said I'm saved, but you said, Calvin living foul and he just fake. And so now he gonna come up in here on the council, or he gonna come in here in the office in the conference, and I'm supposed to trust his decisions. How does that feel? What is that like?
Okay. I am a non-conformist. And so that personality type in itself creates hostile environments because people expect you to conform to the culture and the climate of that community, even when it's toxic. Okay. So when you make the choice that you're going to lead in a particular way and you're going to lead from a moral standpoint, it creates hostility. So it doesn't matter that, you're looking at this person, you're like, well, they're a Christian as well. They should understand. But they have chosen to, like I said, remove that identity when convenient in order to fit in. And so your choice to lead and do things in a godly manner puts them on notice. So they're uncomfortable when you're around because you naturally expose things. So, light and darkness can't dwell together. And so oftentimes if a leader is a Christian and you're their subordinate, what that environment looks like is that person belittling and trying to make sure that who you are does not shine through. But oftentimes they fail at trying to dim your light, because when you have a relationship with God, you never have to mention that you're a Christian, because the actions will dictate that. And I feel as a Christian that every title in the Bible is based on the verb, and if you are not doing the verb, you don't get to have the title. So I believe that being a Christian is a verb, is the action. So people will naturally identify me as a Christian based on my behavior. So when you mention, well, there are some individuals that don't profess to be a Christian that display more positive and godly character, and so maybe they are and they don't know it. And I know that being a Christian has some processes to it, some confessions, but there are individuals who take on godly character more easily and more consistently than those who kind of tell everybody around them that they are. It's very disappointing as a Christian to see your peer engage in a certain way, because the thoughts in my mind is the impact on others. It's a bad witness, and I'm thinking about accountability. What is happening to the body of individuals who have not come to Christ and they are lost? Nothing about seeing certain behaviors will draw them to Christ, and we know the end result of that when they pass from this life. So it's really trying to manage that situation, and you can only do the part that you can as far as praying and maintaining some consistency in your behavior. So when I engage with Christians who are unruly, negative, mean, and so forth, I don't change my demeanor. So no matter what they're doing, I don't change my demeanor. And people are looking at that as a witness,
They're
and
looking at
they
consistency.
maintain their confidence in Christ when they see someone that says, I'm going to take a stand and stand on what I believe, and I'm not going to waver in my actions for anybody.
Question. I want to transition a little bit. So people that are watching this godly character, these are attributes. And some people will say that you can only have godly character and be in God. That's the conversation. So let's talk about godly character and godlike characteristics being manifest in godly characteristics being manifest, and the need for godly characteristics, no matter who you are, whether you're Christian or not. Because the thing that I found is this: even when I was in the military, we had an NCO creed. You had an officer's creed. You got creeds. You have rules that you abide by. You have character. There were certain leadership traits that you had to have. And then more so in the church, I'm shocked. The church is the area that shocks me the most, because that's where my values are the utmost. And then I find out that people just doing this because it's something to do, right? So
Mm-hmm.
my standards in the church are super high. So I try to have them follow me wherever I go. Every now and then, we slip because somebody catch you on the right day, and you get in that flesh and be like, okay, who are you talking to right now?
Right.
And,
Okay.
but because we're we're human. And
Mm-hmm.
so, but let's talk about the need of the godly characteristics, because these are characteristics that men and women have incorporated or codified into policies, procedures, leadership philosophies, so that people in corporate America can succeed, so that people in the educational domain, can succeed. They've incorporated these traits into different aspects of society. And so, what I want to talk about now: why are these godly characteristics? Make something like, I don't know, telling the truth. Being honest. I'll just use those two because we're talking about politics, right? Yeah. So, so what about that? Why are godly characteristics needed and necessary for the upward mobility of individuals in business, for the forward progression of an organization or a business? Why are these concepts needed to be embedded in the lives of the individual, as well as to be incorporated in the fabric of the company, as well as in senior leadership, so everybody reiterates them, so it becomes second nature? But why are godly characteristics, in your opinion, why do you think they're needed and necessary, no matter who you are?
I think as you reflect on the structure of an organization, um, a church, when a person is self-serving, in the long run, it causes hurt to everyone involved. So if I am a political leader and I'm self-serving, or I'm only serving those within my circle, then eventually there's going to be a fall to that government, because you're not thinking about your community holistically. And so, in any organization, corporation, political setting, you have to always be thinking about humankind, so that the outcome can be fruitful for everyone. If you
Right,
notice,
right,
people tend to gravitate to a particular I guess, focus area when it hit home for them. So,
Mhm.
that's why I think that when Martin Luther King talk about, injustices, like injustice for someone else is an injustice for you. Like
Yes.
you have to take that on for yourself, because you never know when that situation hits your home. So from a political standpoint, when we're making a legislation and we say, and a good example, we're going to go back to the abortion. So I'm on the side of making a piece of legislation that violates women's rights to abortion and to choose. And it hit home because I have a 12-year-old child that gets raped. And now I'm in a state that won't allow abortion. My response is going to be totally different now that I can connect and relate to that situation. But if when we're making decisions, we're always thinking about the next person, the next family, regardless of their socioeconomic status, then we are making moral decisions that positively impact the entire community. And a growing and thriving community helps us with longevity, helps us with economic stability. But because traditionally people have been so focused on their own personal gains, their own family personal gains, that we can consistently have a decline in our government structures and economic structures because of that particular mindset. So we have to always make decisions thinking about the impact of the other person in order to be effective. And that's reason enough. So when you say, oh well, I'm gonna cut the benefits for this lower class of individuals in the company, and 2 weeks from now you're demoted to that class, then you would you,
Right.
you
See,
know.
and you know what? And see, you just hit something on that perspective, right?
Hmm.
Ministry, right? You just hit
Yes.
something on that. I'm gonna have to do another video on this, and just go in with ministry because it's super important. People make decisions from where they are now, not considering if it were not for the grace of God.
Yes.
We're going to keep this professional LinkedIn, but
Yes.
not realizing if it were not for the grace of God, where would you be? Where would
Hmm.
we be? So you make a decision that affects a certain class of individuals. Then, like you just said, life hit you. Now you're in that class, right? And so it's just like considering all angles and considering the whole and everybody. But I think you
Hmm.
hit a good point that if we can maintain godly characteristics, or if we're thinking from thinking from that perspective, or using those attributes when we make decisions, that making decisions that affect the whole community ends up being a Christian. You end up it's an end all be all. You
Yes.
pull in everything else. I mean, you pull it all in. You just pull it all in. When you work for a company, I have employees. I had employees, but throughout the years, I had employees and people that worked for me, and I always kept it cognizant, Dr. Miranda, the way I treat them. I always kept that in my mind. If I have, if you take care of, and I would think, so many people in the military, I wish you would think they would get this concept, or managers or people anywhere. And I'm sure you would agree. If you take care of those that are working for you, they will take care of you. If I make sure they're good, if I make sure you have your resources, you are straight, if I make sure that people know, listen, I'm going to have your back and fight for you, because that's part of the godly character too. Because godly character
Mhm.
says, right, I got to, hey, I was wrong. I did this. I need to apologize. I was all, oh, yes, I could have done this better, right? That's part of that godly character, right? Having it, but it applies all throughout through corporations, throughout church as well, army, as well as in politics, making decisions. But see, these things, good managers versus bad managers, good leaders versus bad leaders. I think it is super important. And that's why I asked you that question about these characteristics and how you thought they could be plugged in and applied, because I think they can be applied to everyone. I think they can be applied to everybody in their life, because this decision-making process or incorporating godly characteristics in your life helps mothers, fathers, politicians, military leaders, organizational leaders, church leaders, everybody. It really helps everybody.
And you mentioned earlier about fear. And as I think about it, I think it's more so that people don't want to, as a leader, appear to be weak. And they often
Mm-hmm.
equate Christianity and being a Christian to being weak. It doesn't, we don't serve a God that's weak.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's about making decisions
But why do
that
you
are,
think it is?
huh?
Why do you think that is? Why do you think people equate being Christian or being godly to weak? Right? Why do you think they equate that to being weak?
I think over time you've heard, from the pulpit, pastors who say, turn the other cheek,
Right?
and that's the main thing. It's like, oh, okay, so I can never fight back when something is done to me, when an injustice happens, and that's not what it's about, because we have seen several battles throughout the Bible, that God equipped individuals for. Okay,
Yes,
so
yes.
and we've heard about the wrath of God. So there are sides of God that you don't want to see. And if we are made in his likeness, there are some things that there is some boldness that we can have and still do things with dignity. You know, um, when you have to be direct, you can be direct and do it with dignity. I think people don't understand. They feel like, okay, in order to get my point across, I have to cut someone out.
Gotta
I got
cuss
to
or
belittle
yell
them,
or
or I
race.
have to,
Now you're
what I'm
opening up
saying?
a can now.
Okay,
Just
use
saying,
choice
we
words,
about to get, because watch this. Because now let's get into, see, we got our last 20 minutes. So
Okay.
let's get into it, because you have people like me. When I led and I do what I do, I try to be Christian, but I'm not playing these games.
Okay.
So when I was in the military, I'm like, excuse me, like if somebody was just cursing me, excuse me, who are you talking to right now? Are you talking to me? I said, I don't communicate that way. I communicate in English, right?
Mhm.
I would have people come up to me in all this jargon because they've been watching all these little stereotypical movies. Remember when I was in Afghanistan, people would come up to me talking, some of the Afghans. I said, excuse me. We say good morning over here in the United States. That's how we address people. We don't be like, hey, dog, and all this. So I'm a direct person. Here's the thing. Well, what happens when you're direct? Because you mentioned it early, they make you public enemy number one when they know they can't come around you with foolishness. When
Right.
people know that, hey, Dr. Miranda, you don't
Don't
have to
play.
say it every day. You don't have to profess it, but hey, we know she's about her business. Don't be bringing no foolishness, no lies, no trickery, no stuff around. This is how she operates. Well, then all of a sudden, if people say, hey, that's Calvin, they don't want to be around Calvin. Or they don't want to be around Dr. Miranda. Oh, and then this is what people do. And so this will help somebody out that's watching, because I know
Mhm.
there are people in the military, and you got godly character, and you make decisions and you do your thing to maintain, and people talk about you. There are people in organizations and in corporations, people talk about you in church. Believe it or not, Miranda, you got people in church because you got people that are not holy. So you got people talking about you when you got people trying to live right, do the right thing. And they're talking about you're holier than thou, holy rollers. You got people, while when you're trying to do the right thing at work, they target you behind the scenes and say, Dr. Miranda is different. All because you want to make the right decisions. I'm going to just use an example. Dr. Miranda is difficult to work with. Or she thinks she knows everything. Or she uppity. Or, you can't even hardly, talk to her. Or they make it seem like it's difficult to work with people who manifest godly character. But see, in some domains based on your ethnicity, in some domains based on your position, some domains based on your gender, because you're a woman. So if you were a female, sometimes you wouldn't get that response. I mean, if you was a male, sometimes some people will say, oh, that's professional. Or in different domains, people accept things differently. So how is that being targeted because of godly character? And I'm letting people know, because when people say, look, you can do this, you can make godly decisions. You just have to make the decision to be the underdog. Well, they're not going to like me. I'm not going to have friends. I might not be eating with you at lunch. Nobody going to come to my cubicle. They may not come to my desk. I might have a company full of 2,000 people, only have 3 people that talk to me. Is it worth it? Yes, it is. Can you talk about the targeting when people decide I'm going to use godly character because then you shine and you stand out? Can you talk about that?
Yes. Accountability, as I mentioned, is my focus area. And I think it's a godly character to hold people accountable for their behavior, the injustices, um, the negative attacks on others. When you sit, as they would say, and watch things happen and you're silent, oftentimes people say that that's a form of agreement. And so you can imagine the challenges when God prompts you to speak up when things are not right, whether it's for yourself or someone else, because you do get those statements that people appear to be uncomfortable because you're choosing to do that. But if you're advocating for them and they benefit from it, then it's not a problem. But when they are the person that is displaying the behavior and you have to say, hey, that was wrong that you spoke to her that way, or that was wrong that you did this. And it's not being as they would say, holier than thou, but it's just more so you
Well, they use
pointing out
different
something to
words.
make a correction.
But they use different words. So the people are very strategic in the
Right.
corporate setting. So they're not going to say, you're holier than thou, Miranda. They're in the workplace. They know the right jargon. Miranda, you think you know it all. Miranda, or you know what I'm saying? You know how people do. Or Calvin,
Hmm.
you think you know everything. No,
Well,
no,
you
Calvin,
better than
I'm over here.
everybody.
They use different terms. Or watch this, they know how to take the jargon of their environment and use it to try to throw slander. Well, that's judgmental. What puts you in a position to quote unquote judge somebody as if they're not standards, right? You can't go in the army. You go in the army and you come up in here and your uniform jacked up. Call it judgment. I'm gonna lock that soldier, gonna get locked up. What's going on with this uniform? Hey, soldier, what's
Hmm.
going on? When you go in there, you do something wrong, someone's going to address that. And so people have a tendency to use the workplace jargon to try to throw condemnation on individuals. And I say people, whether they're saved or not saved, Christian, not Christian, godly character it profits much. What I want to talk about now, what are the positive attributes as we close in these last 13 minutes? What are the positive attributes of having godly character and someone's a politician? Right. And I know we've been talking going back and forth. I've been using military politics, you use education, but let's say in politics, what are positive attributes? Like, what are people afraid of to say, I'm in front of everybody and I'm Christian? I think it is going back to some of the fear because they don't want people to peg them as Christian. Now, Dr. Miranda, I do understand a little bit of that because then they're like, okay, if I peg myself as Christian, they're going to look at the church I go to, or they're going to feel like I got all these connections with all these pastors and that I'm making decisions to benefit them or that they are influencing me to make my decisions. So, what is a positive effect of having godly character? What are some positive effects people can see if they decide, you know what, I'm going to display more godly character at work. I don't care anymore. I'm going to display godly character. I'm going to make the right decisions. I'm going to stand up for what's not right. I'm going to stand up for truth. I'm going to help the person that's the underdog. What are some positive results people will see at work and with themselves?
Okay. Um, I
From
want to say that first of all, that how we approach godly character when it comes to the different decisions, we have to make ethical decision making. We have to treat others with dignity. We have to seek sound judgment. So when we don't know how to navigate a situation, we should go to another counterpart that we know will give us advice that aligns with some ethics, seeking godly counsel. Really, the fruits of the spirit that is spoken of in the Bible is a good gauge to operate in and say, hey, am I operating in goodness? I'm being long suffering? Am I operating in gentleness, modesty, self-control? So that self-control is the key. But either way, the position that I'm in, the positive outcome of operating in godly character is building public trust. People have lost so much trust in government because of ungodly character. So if
Right.
I display godly character, it builds public trust and helps them to see that they can elect individuals who have not just deceived them with a Christian title, because apparently that's what has happened in the past. Deceive citizens with a Christian title, and then once they're in the role, everything they do is opposite of that. And so,
Mhm.
who can you blame for that? You have to say, well, the citizens voted for any of the individuals that's in a position, but they took on an identity that was not true to um, who they were and how they actually conduct themselves when it comes to decisions. So if I decide that I will operate at a certain level of integrity, then it builds public trust. If I'm a leader in a school district and I choose to lead in that way, it builds trust among my staff, the community that I serve, and I can get much more done when I have public trust. Once you lose it, it's no turning
You
back.
know what? Now you know what? That's funny too because I was telling someone, even I'm bringing that all the way down to a classroom environment. I used to be an instructor. I taught at a couple of colleges. Watch this. I brought that down to this. Once I was talking with somebody, and I said, "You don't understand. A teacher is a position of trust, just like a politician.
Mhm.
Once that trust has been violated, the damage has been done. You can repent, you can restore, you can go do all of this, but you're going to have to work overtime
Mhm.
because trust is gone for people in a position of trust. What about servants? What about having a mentality of serving? Because people in politics, I'm reminded of I'm going to read this. I think this is good, but I wanted to read this scripture because you were talking about leadership. And this is coming from Exodus. You remember Moses had all these people to lead. But here, this is an ESV translation, y'all. But it does good. It says, moreover, look for able men from all the people, we'll say women too, men who fear God, who are trustworthy, hate a bribe. And it says, you find these men and you place them over people as chiefs of thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens. And I think that bespeaks politics. But nowadays, seems like if you got the money, how are people getting in positions if they are just corrupt?
Well, that's what I mentioned. They take on an identity, the rhetoric, you sound like you're a Christian. You believe in what we believe in. We're against abortions. And, I was in the environments and church environments that said, promoted Trump and said, oh, he's a Christian and he's against abortion, but they ignored um, the relationships with women and the behaviors and the derogatory statements and the racist comments, but they said, but he's a Christian and he doesn't believe in abortion. I think we have to retrain people around their beliefs and understanding of what a godly character is and what they should be looking for in a candidate that you want to represent you in a position. And so I think the challenge is that we get corrupt people because they deceive people, and once they get what they want, then they feel more comfortable to display who they really are.
How do people know the difference? People do this in politics all the time. I'm over here in New Mexico, guy running for governor made a statement. Everybody says they're going to do different.
Mhm.
So the question is, even in the church, right? Organizations, people get elected, come up to positions, people get new supervisors, managers. Well, you're going to be like the last manager I had, so I don't care. Oh, you're going to be like the next supervisor. You try to tell them, I've been in positions like that too, where I come in and I'm like, now I know if I tell you something, we can argue, you can get on my nerves, I can get on your nerves, but if I tell you that I have your back and that this is what I'm going to do, that's me. But people always say, oh, I heard the last one say it, and they lose trust, and then they don't care who's in the position anymore. And I think some people ride on that. How are people supposed to tell the difference, Miranda? You say these people, you got people today, politics is politics. People get in position, they give people what they want, they say they're going to change, then they get in the position and, they do whatever they want to do. How are people supposed to know who is who when they are looking at leaders?
I think you have to kind of look for some consistency. You have to be more around individuals in some more relaxed settings. Who is this person when no one is looking? That's the definition of character, right? So how do they engage with individuals when nobody is looking? A lot of politicians, some politicians, they create a platform where someone is always watching them do something for others.
Mm.
Is this individual doing something for someone without ever mentioning it? Because what the word talks about, you can get your reward from man, or you can get your reward from God. So for me, I don't have to broadcast everything that I do, for others, in order to create a platform that, look at me, I'm an awesome person, I'm wonderful. And I feel that the key word to all of this is conditioning. It's just like with any relationship. If you are conditioned to be a part of a abusive relationship, no matter how much you want to get out of it, no matter how much you say you don't want to be a part of it, but you continue in it, as you transition from that relationship that you have had a cycle of being a part of, when someone comes along that aligns more so with the individual you say you want, there is a rejection of that individual. And it's because you've been conditioned, and you have to be unconditioned
Mm-hmm.
and reconditioned to accept something that's more positive for you. There is almost an expectation for politicians and lawyers, as they would say, to be dishonest and corrupt. It wasn't long before I was in office, and it was immediate association to corruption and particular, like, I was just your neighbor yesterday. You just voted me, and it's already all these politicians are the same. No, you're conditioned to say that. You're conditioned to believe that. So you actually reject seeing a person who is honest and forthcoming on what's happening, because it's like, what
They've been
politician does
conditioned
that?
to think
It's
otherwise.
psychological,
Right,
right?
right. Psychological warfare that people get. So here's the thing. As we close, this is what I want to ask. I want to um, ask you for your last words, but I wanted to say this as well, because having godly character, and this is something I want to say to people that may watch this here in the audience. This means that having godly character means that you may not always get the front position. You may not always be elected. You may not always be the one up front, but you are a pillar, and you are part of the foundation that is holding things up. And this is why people need to understand, even on their job, they might talk about you at your job, come at you, but people, this is why I say people need to know their processes and procedures, human resources, and things of that nature. They might come against you, but know that you're doing the right thing and you can stand. You know what I'm saying? But I think that's the issue, Miranda. A lot of people don't like having godly character because it makes you stand out, and then people don't like you, and they have to deal with that internal issue of, I want to be seen, I want the bigger position, I want to be promoted, or do I want to please God?
Right, right.
At the end of the day, is where I think. Any last words as we close?
The last words I want to say from my heart is that if you honor God and make the decision to display his character, he will honor you. Regardless of what man will do, God will honor your decision to honor him. And so I am a witness to that. I have any battles I have encountered, I have been in the lion's den, and God has equipped me with everything I needed to not be burned. Because when you are in spiritual and natural warfare, you have to lean on God and not man nor yourself in order to endure. So trust the God in you, seek the God in you for guidance. And I think that we will be better off as a community when we approach things with ethical decision as our focus area, just focusing on God and just doing what's right by people. So, you know, regardless of what you believe, most um churches, no matter what the structure, or have some type of principle built on engaging with others in a human way. And so I'm encouraging the leaders out there that it's okay, you're safe, and God will promote you regardless of what you may think because of this secular environment.
Right.
And thank you so much, Dr. Ward, for this opportunity to speak on that.
No problem. I think this warrants some more in depth. I would love to continue this on a part two, a little bit more in depth, and bring in some tools that you can recommend for people, some books you would recommend for people to take. I like classes, seminars that you would have for people to take, because a lot of people need seminars. I remember, how to supervise people. If I say the name, the company is well known for teaching classes. Man, I've taken so many trainings down through the years, but there are courses and trainings. And so if somebody's watching this, I encourage you, if you have politics and in your group, I just encourage you to just find these different tools you can use. I'm going to talk about that more. But Dr. Miranda, thank you so much for being here. I think a part two is definitely warranted, where we can supply people with more tools. I always like to give people, especially during these LinkedIn discussions, I want to start giving people books and tools and examples of seminars that they can use. I know one author off the top of my head, John C. Maxwell, but I want to start giving people tools. Thank you so much for being here, and hopefully we can get you back.
Yes, thank you for having me.
All right, thank you. Also, yes, ladies and gentlemen, so this is Dr. Wood. We're closing here at the top of the hour, but we're talking about that godly character in politics. So if you're watching this, you see this on LinkedIn, or if you're watching this on another platform, we're going to start giving you more tools that you can use, books and tools and seminars that you can use to build yourself. I think these discussions do well, because there's a lot that you can glean from these discussions. And I want to leave off with saying, if you have godly character in your organization, in your business, in the military, then you need to stand steadfast and stand tall. We always tell people in these organizations, it's okay to be different. It's okay to make a decision. It's okay to be autonomous. But a lot of the times when you're the one that's being autonomous, you're the one that's making the decision, you're the one that's standing on what you know to be right, you become a target. And a lot of times that target, for people that are Christian, you become that target, not only because you're doing what's right, but then they target you because of your faith. You become a target. And so you have to make a decision. Would I rather be a target and do what's right and please God, or would I rather be in front doing what's wrong and pleasing man? And then there's a third category. Can I be up front, please God, and do what's right all at the same time? Is it possible? Yes, it is. Is it difficult? It is also difficult as well. But he that endureth to the end will be the one that will get the prize. I'm using that I'm using that part of that scripture, but I'm saying it like that as I end. I just want to tell everybody to do your thing, have faith, stand and believe. And John C. Maxwell is a great author. Any of his books will help you to be a better leader. Thank you for tuning in. And please share this with someone if you glean something from this. And until next time.